calling me in Nigeria. Okay, when I was there, but I choose to come to London because I was thinking coming to London would be better off. Okay, that's why I was already in school over there. I was already, even when I met you, I told you the first thing I want to do is to get education. Okay, and you are using the same education to cost me around. But don't worry. That's why I also try to push my kids. I try to push them because what your mouth.
Just doing a little sound check here. Can someone maybe type on the chat that you can hear me okay?
Yeah, Jim, we can hear you.
Oh, Chris, there you go.
Yeah.
It was too quiet. So welcome everyone to the Gloo Portal Workshop. It's 1 p.m. Eastern right now. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join here. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Gloo Portal Workshop. We're going to give stragglers another couple of minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Thank you for your time today. All right, it's a few minutes after 1, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Gloo Portal Workshop from solo.io. My name is Jim Barton. I am a field engineer in North America for Solo. I've been here for about 8 months now. I come from an app dev background. In fact, I've been writing code since the Reagan administration approximately. And I spent most of the past decade architecting, building, operating enterprise systems for organizations like Amazon and Zappos and Red Hat. So it's good to be with you here this morning. Have a colleague with me as well. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Chris Gahn. I picked a hell of a time to take a bite of something. But my name is Chris Gahn. I'm the director of product here at Solo. I am in charge of all the Gloo products, including Gloo Mesh, Gloo Fed, and Gloo Portal, as well as, which we'll see today, as well as Gloo Edge. So excited to be here and answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Chris. Yeah, the fun part about having Chris on the call is, typically in the course of these kinds of workshops, we get a lot of questions about, hey, when are you going to support X or Y? And so, instead of me having to tap dance around that stuff, I can just flip those straight over to Chris. So really glad you're here today.
Need authority on that.
Exactly. On tap dancing or answering hard questions about product features?
Yeah, both, I think. Yeah.
All right. Very good. So welcome, everyone. Here's what we're going to cover today. In case you didn't read all of the preliminaries, this is very much a hands-on workshop. So we're trying to give you something that's, if there's anything I hate worse in life than death by PowerPoint, I'm not sure what it is. So there will be a handful of PowerPoint slides at the beginning just to kind of position what Gloo Portal is and what you can expect to see today. But by far, the vast majority of our time together is going to be spent in hands-on labs, which is why you see a series of 9 labs on the overview slide there. So what we have done for you, and we'll give you more details on this later, we have provisioned a set of virtual machines that you can access via Apache Guacamole. And we'll have you register for those momentarily when we get to the end of the slides. And so then you'll be able to actually walk through. All you need is a web browser. You don't have to install anything in your local environment at all. But actually through a web browser interface, you'll be able to walk through and follow along with everything that I'm doing here in the lab exercises. So if you're someone who's a hands-on person, I'm hoping that's something that'll be especially valuable for you. So let's let's dig right into the few slides we have here. So this is not something that's a new concept probably to any of you from monolith to microservices. I have a little story I like to tell from something that happened to me about 25 years ago now. I was working for a Silicon Valley software company that was kind of on the cutting edge of some of the trends that have come really to full fruition in enterprise computing over the last decade or so. And the chairman of the company, chairman of the board of the company where I worked, was talking to the CIO of a very large manufacturing company in the United States, whose name you would readily recognize. And this CIO was telling my chairman, he told her, you know, we're having this very public dispute with one of our unions right now. It's a big labor union dispute in the news, negotiating new contracts and so forth. And he said the labor union actually came to us with a very reasonable proposal that from a business standpoint, we really liked. And he said, but from a public positioning standpoint, we had to say that we didn't like it, that it didn't work for our business. But in reality, what was going on behind the scenes, we had these giant monolithic dinosaur systems that supported this aspect of the business. And we knew that it'd be cost prohibitive to you know, to try to transition those to reflect this new model that what the labor union contract, what they were proposing. And so as a result, they had to take a good idea and basically reject it because their information systems were too rigid. And so as I look back over the past quarter century of information technology history, I think a lot of it has been, you know, trying to move as quickly as we can away from that model where we have rigid information systems that don't support our business objectives. And so one manifestation of that, of course, there's been a number of things over the years in terms of tools and execution environments and so forth. But one of those trends is this notion of going from monoliths to microservices, where rather than having a single giant application, we split those up into a smaller collection of services, even microservices, and have an environment that's really optimized for deploying those. And so of course, one of the primary current technology that's really capturing this space is Kubernetes technology. And so that's the de facto standard for executing collections of microservices. And so the tools that Solo's building all focus on basically API connectivity and access and observability and all these kinds of good things in this kind of an environment. So, excuse me. So in this new world, how do you expose your applications? Well, certainly in Kubernetes, there is the notion of an ingress controller that can be used to publish applications out to the outside world. It's kind of limited in scope. Not a lot of people use it from my experience in large scale deployments. And so consequently, there are a number of technologies that have emerged that fall into this API gateway space, allowing you to connect from the outside, whether it's from the Internet of Things or from other systems or from end users, to connect into your services, which may be deployed in a number of ways on the inside. They may be deployed in Kubernetes pods. They may also be deployed outside a kube cluster in, say, on a bare metal virtual machine, or perhaps even in one of the emerging functions as a service platforms like Amazon Lambda or Google and Microsoft also have equivalent capabilities. And so these API gateways allow you to connect, to secure, to control, and to have observability into what's going on inside your system. And so Solo has a product that plays in this space, and it's called Gloo Edge. You may have, if you've been following Solo for a while, you may have heard it called just Gloo, which was its original name, but we've now taken the Gloo umbrella from a product standpoint and created a number of products underneath the Gloo umbrella. So one of those is Edge, which is the API gateway that was actually our first major entry into the marketplace. And then the one we're going to look at today is one that's called Gloo Portal, which really is all about providing an API management framework that can live on top of Gloo Edge, or potentially in the context of a service mesh like Istio as well. So what is it that we want to be able to do with our APIs? So you know, how can we publish them out to end users? How do we document them in a way that's you know, where we basically, you know, we document them once and then that can be published out as part of the API specification. How can we secure them? Authentication, authorization, rate limiting, circuit breaking, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, how can we monetize them? So these are the kinds of questions that that we're trying to answer with the Solo product suite. So Gloo Edge, we've already talked about, is an API gateway technology. It runs especially well in a Kubernetes environment. Gloo Mesh is our newest major product offering, and it's all about providing you with enterprise support for Istio and being able to control, say, a multi-cluster, even heterogeneous service mesh environment from a single management pane of glass, which is a pretty ambitious undertaking, but we think it's one that's going to be emerging as an issue in enterprise technology over the next several years. And what we're going to focus on today is Gloo Portal, which is all about managing these APIs that we create and then publishing them in a couple of different contexts, potentially into a Gloo Edge context, or for users who have adopted, say, full-blown Istio, deploying them into a Gloo Mesh service mesh context. The same code base, same interfaces, but you have two different deployment targets that you can use your portal outputs with. Okay. If you have any questions, this is kind of a tough environment to do, you know, interactive voice questions. Certainly feel free to chat questions, and if you'd like to ask a question with voice, just raise your hand, and Chris or someone will unmute you, and we can take questions as well. Okay, so some of the things that the Gloo Portal technology will do for us. So we've already talked about deployment targets here. So you can deploy your Gloo Portal managed APIs via Istio or via Gloo Edge. The current way that we get at your APIs is via the Open API spec, typically with Swagger tools. We're going to be expanding that out over the next couple of months. Chris will talk a little more about that at the end of this workshop, some of the plans we have for expanding beyond support for just Open API to standards like gRPC. Everything we do at Solo is Kubernetes native. All of our products were designed from the ground up to run well in a Kubernetes native environment. Now they often run in other environments as well, but that's the target. That's the place we target first. And so when I say Kubernetes native, I don't just mean things like you can drop it into a pod and it runs. I mean things like the way our APIs are structured. We use Kubernetes custom resources as the main way to specify what it is that you want these interfaces to do. So we, you know, for example, we leverage, we build Kubernetes custom resources, we leverage native storage in Kubernetes, et cetera. So it's built from the ground up to be a cloud native kind of system. And also Gloo Portal provides a self-service experience for the development communities that you're trying to support. So you package your APIs, and then you'd like to have, say, a community of external users be able to provision things like their own API keys to be able to access your services in that environment. So there is a self-service portal component of Gloo Portal as well, in addition to the more administrative and development kinds of components. Okay. Take a drink here. So Gloo Portal does come with both administrative and end user and developer experiences, as we've talked about. So this is a screenshot of the administrative API. We will be talking about that more as we get into the labs, but you can just get a sense of some of the things that we that are supported through this administrative interface to connect and secure and control your APIs. Again, we'll cover all this in much more detail coming up. So that was the administrative side of the interface. There's also, as we talked about, the end user side. So once you have specified what you want your portal to look like, you've kind of declared this is what I want it to be, then Gloo Portal will actually dynamically generate the portal web interfaces for you. So you'll see this is the end user interface where you can see things like I can provision APIs, I can browse the APIs that have been published to me, I can look at different versions of those. I have a I have a sandbox where I can go execute those, that sort of thing. So we'll take a look at all of that as we go through the workshop today. Don't want to beat this stuff into the ground, but here's some of the major functional areas that Gloo Portal provides. So as we've said, self-service, we've talked about traffic control, being able to apply policies external to obviously the underlying software you've implemented, but even external to, say, the open API spec. We can take multiple API specs, merge those together, pick and choose the elements we want, and then apply policies on top of those kind of those amalgamated groups of services. Authentication, we can secure these services that we publish through Gloo Portal using API keys, using JWT. We've also added support for OIDC, so you can delegate off to technologies like Keycloak or Auth0 or Okta, that sort of thing. We've talked about Open API Swagger support, which is at this point our primary target for how we consume APIs to publish. You can also provide your own custom branding. We have a couple of labs at the end where we'll show you how you can supply your own imagery, even imagery, color schemes, logos, even down to the level of say custom CSS. If perhaps if you're publishing to an external audience and you really want to maintain tight control over the branding experience that your developer consumers will have, this gives you the ability to go pretty far down into the weeds to control that. Also, things like providing your own documentation, both static pages as well as pages that have dynamic content associated with them. The architecture is all cloud native, as we discussed, and also there is support for deploying these services both to a Gloo Edge environment, typically in Kubernetes, as well as to Istio environments as well. Okay. One of the points that we really like to make sure that folks understand who are considering this technology is that from the ground up, Gloo Portal is a native Kubernetes product. And so one of the ways that you see that is by the fact that we provide our own Kubernetes CRDs, and so you'll see for all of these abstractions, the way that you specify, say, the Swagger doc that you want to publish is you'll build this thing called an API doc that sits on top of that, which is just a native part of your Kubernetes deployment. And so you can see that for all of these major abstractions that will go into portal, API products, environments, API docs, etc. They are all Kubernetes custom resources. All right. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about Open API versus Swagger. So some people get confused about this. There is a subtle distinction. Open API is a specification for basically how REST interfaces should look and be structured, whereas Swagger is a set of tools that implement that specification. So people often use the terms interchangeably, which is fine in my book. But it is sometimes important to realize that what we're supporting here in in Gloo Portal is Open API specification specifically. And then over the course of this lab, we'll be using the Swagger tool set to actually work with that. Okay. All right. All right, let's talk labs. All right, we're getting to the good stuff here. Let me just pause and ask if there are any questions. If you can raise your hand or chat, give us a chat message, something like that. Give you a few seconds here. Going once, twice. Sold. All right, you're either all asleep or I'm doing an okay job. So let's talk about our lab environment here a little bit. So we are going to be using Gloo Portal, not surprisingly. We're also going to be deploying our Gloo Portal services via Gloo Edge. If we were doing this in a Gloo mesh, Istio service mesh sort of environment, the experience would be practically identical. It's just a different deployment target for us. And so we're going to be doing that. And then in our lab environment, what we're going to do is we're going to have a single, you're going to have a VM that has a kind cluster that's installed. And there'll also be a load balancing framework called Metal LB in there. You won't really be interacting with that very much. You will be interacting with kind a bit, and certainly interacting quite a bit with Gloo Edge and Gloo Portal. Okay. I understand there are some questions in the chat, so let me take a look at those. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm handling them, Jim.
Oh, you got it? Okay, okay. All right, very good. It's always nice to have good help on these calls. Thank you, Chris. All right, so let's get started with Lab 0 here. So before we start with Lab 0, we need to provision some VMs for all of you. And so let's get to that. Let me take you here. What we're going to do, you see this spreadsheet here. I'm going to chat this out, hopefully. So if everyone could follow this link that's in chat right now and go to this spreadsheet, what you're going to see is we have about 30 VMs that we've provisioned. We thought that would be enough. My understanding is we have more people here than we expected. So what I want you to do, some of you get the hang of this already, just put your name in an empty attendee name slot. And when you do that, you will see over to the right, there is a link called VM link. If you traverse that link, it will take you to Apache Guacamole interface that will get you into our environment today. You may want to pick an environment that's close to where you are geographically. We have VMs that are deployed in US East 1. This is all Google Cloud, in US East 1 or US Central 1. So pick the one that's most convenient to you. Hopefully the US Central VMs aren't buried under a foot of snow today. I really need a straight man to laugh at my bad jokes.
There you go.
Thanks, Chris. Can you give me a rim shot? All right. All right. So I'm going to give you just a minute. What we like to do as we go through this process is, so I'll actually be walking through the lab. So explaining, walking through them. And so you can either go along with me, and as I do the work, you can do the work, or if you'd like to kind of, different people learn in different ways. If you'd sort of like to watch and absorb it and then go through and actually do the work yourself, you're certainly free to do it that way. Or if you just like to observe and absorb, that's perfectly acceptable as well. So, so once you go to these VM links, I'm assuming, it looks like we have several people who've signed up. If there's anyone who hasn't signed up, we do have, I was a little concerned we might not have enough provisioned. It looks like we have enough provision. So If there's anyone else who wants to grab a VM, this would be a good time to do that. And
Someone's asking for the creds for Apache Guacamole.
Yes, right here, right above. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that earlier. Right here, if you'll notice where my cursor is hovering, the user is solo. The password is uppercase workshop1#. So that should get you right in. Also on the housekeeping front, one of the things that people always invariably ask is, well, what happens if I need to cut and paste something from my desktop into, into my Guacamole environment? So typically you don't have to do that, although it always seems like every one of these sessions we do, someone wants to for whatever reason. And so there is a way you can share your copy paste buffer between Guacamole and your desktop. The way that you do that, if you are on a Mac, you do Control-Command-Shift. I will demonstrate. And that did nothing. Control-Command-Shift. There you go. And you can see popping up on the left here, you can type stuff in here, and then you can do normal cut and paste using your standard desktop controls. You can also toggle that using the same key sequence. Control-Command-Shift will make that go away. And if you have the unfortunate experience of being on a Windows platform, I'm sorry, if you're on a Windows platform, you can accomplish the same thing using the Control-Alt-Shift key sequence. Okay, so hopefully that will forestall some questions here. Okay, everyone good? All right, so you can, what I recommend in terms of how you set up your desktop to get the most out of this exercise, I set up a couple of applications here on my desktop. One is obviously Chromium browser. If you bring that up, it should land you on this GitHub Workshops page here. We'll come back to that. Also, you'll want to have a terminal that's up, maybe with a couple of tabs in it. I also use one of the alternate desktops to have a browser just with some more screen real estate for when we get to things like the administrative interfaces and the portal and that sort of thing.
Hey, Jim, this is BG.
Yes.
Could you please record this session because I don't have access to review that VM link?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we do record all of these sessions, and I believe there'll be a follow-up email that goes out that will tell you how you can get access to it. So hopefully
awesome.
that will, yep, that shouldn't be a problem.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. So if you go down to the bottom, so this just gives you some basic housekeeping on your virtual machine. There's the user and password. Hopefully you're all in at this point. And then you can click through this workshops link here. You can see we run these workshops on a variety of topics, and we're actually expanding the list of topics pretty aggressively right now. We typically run one of these every, I don't know what, once a month, once every 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. And we ran one early this morning, really early this morning, North American time in Europe, talking about Gloo portal, and then the one that you're in right now. So if you watch our marketing channels for if you'd like to learn, kind of go more in depth with any of the other Gloo products as well. So let's click through the Gloo portal link here. This will take you into the actual README that contains the lab exercises. A lot of this stuff we've already talked about here, so we'll skip over that until we get down here to lab 0. Okay, so just make sure everyone is following along with me. Everyone's good. You're in your VM. You have your web browser where you can follow the lab exercises, and then you have a terminal where you can do some execution. All right, with no objections, we will move forward. Okay, so what we're going to do with Lab 0, again, we are starting out, but on purpose, we are starting out with a blank slate here. So about all you have, or you've got a VM with some basic tools installed. We're going to start from pretty much ground zero, installing the Kubernetes cluster. We're going to install key cloak, and as well as the various solo technologies that we're going to be using today, just to give you a sense of what the whole process of getting started looks like. Now, one other thing I want you to notice, because just from an efficiency standpoint, this will make your life much, much easier. We have in these Chromium browsers on these desktops, we have a Gloo plugin, we have a Chrome plugin installed that gives you this little copy to clipboard button here for all of the command blocks. This is going to be really, really helpful for you. You don't want to be copying and pasting. Now, some of you, what we have seen in the past, sometimes when you initially come in here, this button will not be visible. If it's not visible for you, simply refresh your page, and then it should be there for you. Okay, so hopefully that'll make your life a little easier. All right, so let's start with Lab 0. Getting started, we're going to install a Kubernetes cluster. Again, this is going to be using Kind, and we're also going to install Keycloak to be our identity management system. So let's go over here. We will go into the directory where we want to get started. You can see we have a number of resources that are there that we'll explore over the course of the afternoon. And then we're going to run a deployment script that's going to create our Kind cluster. So this is going to take a few minutes. One of the things that I like to do is rather than rely just on kubectl, I like to open up another terminal here. And we also one of the things I made sure we had on these VMs is K9s. Just as this is obviously, this is not a Gloo tool or not a solo tool. This is just a Kubernetes community tool that lets you have a peek into what's going on in your Kubernetes cluster. Now you can see the cluster hasn't been provisioned sufficiently for this to work yet, but we'll come back to it in a moment, and it should be ready. Once this deployment script finishes and actually gets our Kind cluster out there, I'm going to ask you to run this. Sorry, wrong one. Run this check.sh script. It's simply going to make sure that everything is provisioned as expected, and that you're good to go. So you can see it just prints a little message there while you're waiting for the cluster to spin up. We should also have enough now. We can bring up K9s. And we can see, yeah, you can see kind of where we are there. The elements of the Kind cluster are still spinning up. So we'll give that a minute. Next, we're going to move on to Keycloak. So I think we're good here. Yep, that looks good. Hopefully this is all pretty straightforward in your environment as well. So we're going to install Keycloak at this point. So if you haven't used Keycloak before, think poor man's Auth0 or Okta, something like that. So it is an open source identity management system. One other little quirk you'll notice when you're going through these exercises, you can see when you have a multi-line command, what this will do, it'll copy it into the terminal window, but it'll only execute up to the very last command. You have to often, not every time, but often you have to kind of hit enter on the last command yourself. So this is going to set up our Keycloak deployment and then roll that out. And so we can go back over here and you can see there's our Keycloak pod that is spinning up, and that will take just a minute. After we finish that, then we're going to configure Keycloak. I'm not going to go into all the details of what we're doing here, but it's basically we're setting up initial tokens, configuration settings, providing some administrative user settings and so forth, as well as a user that we can use to authenticate with when we get later in the lab. So this obviously is this piece of it has nothing to do with Gloo Portal per se, but just a part of the setup for Keycloak. All right, so let's go back here and we will execute that. And so that's pretty easy. So congratulations. If you've made it with me to this point, then you are done with lab 0. Give you just a few seconds here. All right, so now that we have the kind cluster deployed and we have key cloak deployed, now we're actually going to build up our application code. So we're going to start with the actual Open API document, the Swagger document, and we're going to use some generation tools to produce a skeleton for that application. And then we're going to actually use a Docker image that's already out there to supply the implementation. So that's mostly what we'll be doing in this lab 1. So if you want to take a look at what our Open API document looks like, you can run this command right here. That's going to pull it down from the swagger.io website and just take a look at the first 25 or so lines of it. So you can see that there's some version information that's specified here. If we looked at the whole thing, there'd be specific endpoints and that sort of thing. We'll take a look at those as we go forward. And then what we've done to try to simulate in a very simple scenario what you would do in a real environment is we've created 2 Open API documents in this directory. So one is called Swagger v1, that's going to correspond to our version 1, and then another one called v2 that corresponds to our v2. Now, the implementation behind that is actually going to be the same, but we're going to enforce the changes with a difference in the interface contracts. So you can see that very clearly. If you run this diff command, you can see the difference between the v1 and v2 interfaces. So what we've done is we've pretended like in v1 we didn't have any support for this photo URLs attribute that's returned in some of the responses, and then in v2 we've actually added that. So we have we have available to us at least the ability to publish photos of the pets that are in the pet store. So that's our major upgrade between v1 and v2. All right. Hopefully that all makes sense. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to generate the application code here. So let's pull down this Swagger sample. All right, so we've got that, and that came down as an archive that we will uncompress. So now we have the full kind of generated skeleton there. We will go into the directory where all of the real goodies are, and then let's take a look at this kind of the central API element, the API pet.go file. So what you can see is this is just a skeleton that was generated for us out of the Open API doc, and you can see it has all of the endpoints: add pet, delete pet, find pets, et cetera, but it's just the implementation is just a skeleton. And so obviously we could, if we had the time and inclination, we could provide the implementations, but what we're going to do instead is we're simply going to supply those from a Docker image that's out there as well. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so let's deploy. So you can see we're going to do 2 deployments of this application. There's one that's v1 that pulls the v1 interface, and another one for v2. Okay, so there's absolutely nothing solo-ish or glue-ish that's going on here. This is just straight Kubernetes deployment. So let's push that out there. And we can take a look at our K9s window, and you can see there are two versions being deployed to our cluster right now. There's Pet Store v1 and there's Pet Store v2, and they look like they're good to go. All right. So that is the end of lab 1. Let me take just a couple of minutes, and in case you are not staying directly with me, give you a couple of minutes to catch up. Maybe you want to get a drink of water like I do. If there are any questions at this point, this would be a good time to push them out there. Give you one more minute here. Okay, so without any objection, I'm going to assume that everyone who's following along with the VMs has completed lab 0 and lab 1. You should have a Kubernetes cluster out there. You should have Keycloak deployed, and you should have your Pet Store application deployed. All right, we're not quite through with installation just yet. Lab 2 is going to walk us through the installation of Gloo Edge and Gloo Portal. Remember that Gloo Edge is the API gateway technology that Solo publishes, and Gloo Portal is the API management product that we're going to be focusing most on. But we need a target environment that we can deploy our Gloo Portal artifacts into, our policies into, and so we're going to use Gloo Edge for that in this case. Again, as we mentioned before, you can also have a very similar experience with the Gloo Mesh technology that is deployed in an Istio service mesh kind of environment. Okay, so let's start off with Gloo Edge. There are two versions of Gloo Edge. There's Gloo Edge open source and Gloo Edge enterprise. Open source, as it suggests, you can go, download it, use it today. Many people do that and are able to get quite a bit accomplished using the open source technology. What we're going to be showing you today, because we're using Portal, is we're going to be showing you Gloo Edge Enterprise. So this is a product that's available via subscription, and you also get access to Solo's world-class technical support, which means you get to chat with me and my buddies on Slack. And so let's get started with this. We're going to install Gloo Edge Enterprise to begin with. You should notice, though, actually one thing maybe we should check. I'm pretty sure this is correct everywhere, but that's not what I meant to do. There should be a trial license key installed on your VM. If there's not, let us know. We can get one to you. It should look something like that. And if you don't have that, then when you start actually doing things with Gloo Edge, you're going to get some nasty errors. So let's do this. Let's start off by installing Gloo Edge. The first thing we're going to do is install basically a CLI tool called Gloo CTL. When you actually become a Gloo user, any of our products, Gloo CTL will be a friend of yours. It has some really fun diagnostics in it, like Gloo CTL check that will proactively go through all of your Gloo artifacts and make sure that they all line up and there's no dangling references and that everything is, spelled correctly and matches up with, corresponding resources and so forth. So we won't really be looking at that today, but if you are a Gloo Edge user or thinking about becoming one, Gloo CTL check is a service that you'll want to get to know. So we've installed the Gloo CTL command line tool, and now we're actually installing the Gateway enterprise version of Gloo Edge. And so you can see that's actually filling in behind the scenes here. We're almost up and running. Just to show you a couple of the, actually, let's run this. There's also a script that will tell us when we're done. So let's kick that off. That's the next little box down. And all this is going to do is check every second to see when the Gloo system pods are ready, and then when they're ready, it will tell us that we're done. So maybe we can take this just a minute here to talk a little bit about the architecture of Gloo Edge, just for a little while. So Gloo Edge is based on Envoy Proxy. If you're not familiar with Envoy Proxy, it is a piece of supremely cool open source technology that was put out into the world by Lyft a few years ago, and it's since been adopted as a reverse proxy by just about everyone who is anyone in this API, larger API gateway space. And so if you're not familiar with Envoy Proxy, definitely you should take a minute to get familiar with that. And so what you see right here, you see there are a handful of pods that are deployed in this Gloo system namespace. So these are the microservices that comprise the Gloo Edge system. Again, we're not talking about Portal at this point. This is strictly Gloo Edge. And so just very quickly, you can see there's something called Gateway Proxy here. That's the actual data plane. That's where the Envoy Proxy lives. You can see there are a couple of other pods here, Gateway and Gloo, that actually act as control planes for that data plane. So they will, for example, parse changes. They'll detect changes in the environment. They'll see changes that you have coming in, like, hey, I want to change the specification of this virtual service to be X instead of Y, and we'll take that and translate that into dynamic config that the Envoy data plane can consume and use. So really pretty cool technology. There's no, with the Gloo technologies, you're never going to have to restart your server to pick up new config. It's all served dynamically from these controller pods. So it's a really, really, really nice design. You can also see there's an API server pod here that actually, its purpose is to serve up our administrative interface that we'll be looking at more extensively later. You will see a discovery pod here. So one of the things, we won't be really looking at this today, but when you're getting started with Gloo especially, and you have a whole bunch of Kubernetes services that you pushed out there and you want to be able to make them available as targets for routing from Gloo, the discovery pod will actually detect as these services are deployed, and will then create what we call upstreams, which is one of the key abstractions in Gloo that basically defines a target, a kind of a routable target service that you can consume. So the discovery pod is really useful, and in production you can turn it off if you'd like. You don't have to leave it on all the time. It's configurable. We offer a lot in terms of external authorization services. So again, as we talked about, if you want to, use any kind of OAuth, OIDC technology, Auth0, Okta, Keycloak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This actually, when the requests come in through the data plane, they are delegated off to this XDOF pod for authentication. And just very quickly, there's some metrics, Prometheus integration, dashboards that are generated dynamically via Grafana. We provide this stuff out of the box. This is with the enterprise subscription only. or you can integrate with your own, say Prometheus and Grafana installations as well. Finally, we'll be talking about rate limiting today. So there's a rate limiting pod that when a service gets called and there is a rate limiting configuration associated with it, the data plane will actually delegate off to that rate limiting pod to determine whether the rate limiting constraints are all met. And then in turn, the rate limiting pod uses a Redis cache behind the scenes. Again, you can configure this to use your Redis instance if you already have one, or we supply one as well. So that's actually the backend store for both XDOF and rate limiting. Okay. All right. So that gave us enough time to get our Gloo Edge installation done. So now on top of that, we will install Gloo Portal. Pretty simple process. You'll notice in this case, we used Helm. We could have used GlueCTL as well, but all of our products, you can install them with our CTL command line tools, or you can install them with Helm. And so just to show you that you can go either way, we'll just install this one with Helm. All right, and so there's also a little wait script that we can use to wait for the portal to be fully provisioned. Looks like it already is, but let me just show you over here on K9. You can see we installed all of the portal elements in a new namespace called dev portal. And you can see there are only two unique elements here. So as we said, dev portal actually targets Gloo Portal for its deployment platform in this instance. And so there are only two unique pods here that are associated strictly with dev portal. One is the admin server. This serves up the interface for the administrative server app, cleverly enough. And then there is the dev portal pod itself, which is basically the control plane for dev portal elements. Okay, that's pretty simple. And so that should be good to go. All right, that's lab 2. I'm hoping I gave everyone enough time in lab 2 to get through there. Certainly if you're struggling, raise your hand, send a chat message. Chris and the team will make sure you get the support you need. Otherwise, I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds here, and then we'll move on to lab 3, where we'll actually get into the process of building out the Gloo Portal abstractions. Yeah, Chris, maybe you can come up with some solo theme music we can use during these interludes.
I got a mechanical keyboard, so it could just be me typing.
Yeah.
So the airport.
I was thinking more like, instrumental jazz, but that's okay. We can go with the keyboard too. All right. I'm going to interpret the silence as not that everyone's asleep, but that everyone is doing well. And so let's move on to lab 3, which will where we'll actually begin building out some Gloo Portal abstractions. Now, I think there's a really cool distinction that we want to make, that I want to make right here at the beginning, and it's that we're going to go through this lab, and actually through a lot of these labs, using the API. So we're actually going to create the Kubernetes abstractions that underlie the portal. Okay. Now, there is a completely different experience that's available to you, and we'll also take a brief look at that, but there is an administrative interface where every single thing I'm going to do right here that you're going to do right here, you could also do via the administrative interface. Now, we made this kind of design choice for this workshop for a reason, and that is we're assuming that most of you are going to use this in more of a CLI, GitOps kind of environment, and so you would prefer seeing it done this way as opposed to perhaps, let's say the more, administrator-friendly experience that you can get through the web UI. So, if you're wondering why I'm not showing you lots of pretty pictures, that's why, because we're assuming that at least for the majority of you, this is the experience that you'd rather see. So we'll have a survey at the end of the workshop. So certainly, if you have a different perspective on that, you'd like to see something else, that'd be a good place to give us feedback. This is as I think I may have mentioned before, today is the first day we've run this particular workshop before, and so we're even more than usual interested in getting your feedback on how this works for you. Okay. All right. So, let's dive in. Lab 3, creating API docs. So the API doc is a very, very thin abstraction that sits on top of, at this point in time, a single open API Swagger document. So if you have an open API document that describes the interface and you ingest that, as we're going to do here, into an API doc, it's a very thin layer. You're pretty much just going to see what was in your Swagger doc published out into this API doc. Now, there is a higher level of abstraction we're going to get to in just a little bit that allows you to do more in terms of composing these artifacts and composing these services in different ways. But at this point, this is just a very thin wrapper over the open API doc. So let's take that. And again, as with everything in Gloo land, this is a custom Kubernetes resource that Solo built, an API doc, and you can see it right here in your K9's interface if you want to. So there's the one we just built. You can go take a look at the YAML. You can see, in fact, so we started off, we just gave it a URL here, right? And you can see how that JSON was parsed from that URL, and we're getting all of these different operations that are published from inside that open API doc. You can also see that it succeeded, so it was consumed successfully, and that's good news. And so we will move on. Of course, if you would, if you prefer to do it the old-fashioned way, you can use kubectl and look at the YAML there. Okay, so that's version 1 API doc. Version 2 API. You might recall what we're doing is we're publishing slightly different versions for version 1 and version 2. Version 1 does not have the photo feature built in. Version 2 does have the photo feature built in, and so that's the difference. That's going to be the difference between these two. And again, if you'd like, you can. I won't bother doing this again, but you can take a look at the V2 version of this, at the version of this API doc, and you'll see practically the same thing that you did in V1. Okay, so again, API docs. All you need to remember: very thin layer over top of open API / Swagger documents. Now, this abstraction that we're going to talk about next, the API product, there's a little more action here. So again, another custom resource that allows you to package these API docs in arbitrary ways to suit whatever it is you want to publish. Again, the abstraction is API product, right? And so, think of this as, this is what I want, one of my developer clients, whether it's internal or external, this is what I want them to see. This is what I want them to be able to consume. This is a coherent set of operations that represents a product in my space. And so you have the ability, you can combine multiple API docs into an API product. You can pick and choose what operations out of those API docs you want to publish. You have quite a bit of flexibility here in terms of both what endpoints you publish as well as applying policies for what you can do with that. So again, we're externalizing all of that from the underlying software. We're even externalizing it from the API doc. So we're providing these kinds of policies, things like rate limiting policies, authentication policies, that sort of thing. And we're bundling that kind of functionality here into this API product abstraction. Okay. So what you can see for this API product that we're going to be pushing out, what we're doing is we're going to have a single product, but in that single product, we're going to have two separate versions, two separate API docs that we're going to publish as part of that product. So you can see here's V1 and here's V2. Okay, and you can see they're pointing off to particular Kubernetes service locations in our little ecosystem here. Okay. You might also notice, we'll look at this in a little more detail later. You can also see there's some images specified here. Well, in this case, there's only one image specified here. There are multiple images you can specify here, and this is just part of the framework. We'll get into details later. This is just part of the framework that allows you to customize what the actual developer generated portal is going to look like. So for example, if we just, we could, take this and you can see it's just a URL that, that points to some fun little dog image out there. Okay. So you'll see that when we actually get to the portal publication later. Okay. So let's create our API product. And that was created hopefully successfully. Let's go here. We go back. Remember, we've got API docs. You can see now there are two API docs here, Pet Store V1, Pet Store V2. We're going to compose those into a single API product. And that is this product that we're calling Pet Store. And you can see all the details of what we did here. And you can also see, hopefully at the bottom, that it was accepted successfully, which it was. Okay. All right. So we just checked the status. We don't need to do that. All right. So we've created an API doc. We've created an API product. Now we're going to create a third abstraction called an environment. This is a newish abstraction in Gloo portal, but it's extremely powerful. It's really required for people who are doing serious development. And so an environment just corresponds to, it's a collection of compute resources where these applications are deployed. So many organizations have practices today where you have, say, individual development environments where you can deploy stuff. Maybe you have a shared test environment. Maybe you have a staging environment. Maybe you have some other kind of QA pre-production environment, and then of course you have a production environment. And so the purpose of this abstraction is to capture the fact that we may publish these abstractions, these API products. We may want to publish them perhaps with different policies into different kinds of environments. So for example, if I'm in a development environment, maybe I don't need to have authentication and authorization turned on perhaps. But in production, obviously I want that fully locked down. So that's what we're getting at with this environment abstraction. And so you can see here, we're calling this environment, we're going to give it the name dev, and we're going to deploy the Pet Store product. Again, you could deploy multiple products into a single environment. Hopefully that's obvious. So you can put multiple products in here, and then we're going to publish multiple versions of that product into this environment. So let's take this and push that out. And then just for fun, let's use kubectl to get a look at what we just did. And so you can see that pretty much reflects what we just specified. Okay, so we've specified an API doc. We've composed those into an API product. We've taken these API products, we've pushed them out into our dev environment. And we just want to show you here that what you're doing behind the scenes is you're actually building an abstraction called a virtual service. Now, virtual service is not native to Gloo Portal. That's actually an abstraction that we use in the Gloo Edge environment. And so basically what it is, think of it as just, these are the routing rules and the transformation rules that define how I take a request that's coming in from the outside, I transform that, I route it, maybe apply some other policies to it, WAF or whatever, and then route that to the actual service where the application lives. And so what's happening is that Gloo Portal is based on these Gloo Portal abstractions that we've created. It's actually building a virtual service that corresponds to all of these endpoints. And so it takes all of that work off of us. You can certainly, many of our customers use Gloo Edge directly, and they build these virtual services from scratch. And so Gloo Portal just provides a little bit of a higher level interface that makes it somewhat easier to produce the initial versions of these things. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So, we have our virtual services that we have generated that contains the route to the operations that are exposed from our API product. And then we have also have upstreams that have been generated that correspond to the actual targets themselves. So this is another Gloo abstraction that is generated here. And so you can see there are two upstreams that have been generated. There's one that corresponds to Pet Store V1 and another that corresponds to Pet Store V2. All right. And so we can actually route to those now. Okay. So at this point, we actually have some working software. So we should now be able to access. So this is one of the endpoints, the store inventory endpoint that's published in our Pet Store. You can see we're going at the dev instance here, and let's see what happens. The computing gods are smiling on us. Oh, computing gods are not smiling on us. What? Oh, I skipped a step. Okay. Yeah, let's go back up here. We need to update. Okay. Yeah, so from a networking standpoint, we need to update our Etsy host file. And so, yeah, you can see what we have now is we've added endpoints for the devpetstore.com, and which is basically the interface that users are going to come in the dev environment, and then portal.petstore.com, which is where the developers will come to say hit the browse APIs, generate API keys, play in the development sandbox, that sort of thing. Okay. All right. Now let's try once more with feeling. And lo and behold, there we have it. So we have an inventory. This is not terribly interesting endpoint, but you can see it gives us a snapshot of our current inventory. We have 7 pets in inventory, 2 sales are pending, and 1 has been sold recently. Okay, so we now have published via the portal, via Gloo Edge. We have these services that are out there and running. Now you'll notice there's no security on this, right? We're just hitting the service. We haven't applied any real policy to it, and so that's one of the things we'll be doing over the course of the next few labs is applying policy to it and showing you how to do that sort of thing. Okay. We'll also check and see. So that's V1 of the service. Let's also check V2. You can see the V2 endpoint is operational as well, as you would expect. And again, the only difference in these two versions is photo URL, so we're not seeing that data exposed through this operation. But if we, let's say we get crazy here and we think, hey, well, maybe there's a V3 out there too. That's not going to work. We're going to get a 404 because we haven't published one of those. Okay, so we have now created our base routing rules to get from the gateway to the services themselves. And next, we're going to tackle lab 4. We're actually going to create the portal the portal interface. Okay. So I'm going to take about, let's say, a 4-minute break. I have 2:11 p.m. I'm going to start back at 2:15 p.m. Eastern time. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at that time, and we'll move forward with Lab 4. All right. See you in a bit. All right, 2:15 Eastern time by my clock. I'm just browsing through the chat here. There's a question about how to check the API product CRD in K9s. It's pretty easy to do. So you can just do colon, oh wait, I'm focusing in the wrong place, colon API product. And we only have one right now. So you can hit the Y button to see the YAML, and yep, so there's the YAML associated with it. So let's see, who was that? Yeah, hopefully that answers that question. All right, Chris is off looking up an architecture doc. We definitely, yes, we can definitely provide some more some better high level architecture docs for sure. Okay. All right, so yeah, it looks like we're doing pretty well from a chat standpoint here. Okay. Excuse me. So let's dive into lab 4 here. So we've laid the foundation now. We've installed all the core components. We have built an API doc, which is just a wrapper around the Swagger doc, the Open API doc. We have built an API product, which just in our case, just very simply kind of takes that API doc and pushes that out there. Again, we could get fancier about how we compose API products, potentially pulling in multiple API docs and so forth. And now we're going, and we also defined an environment. In this case, we just have a single environment called dev. But in your world, you may have multiple environments where you're pushing different versions of these APIs into different environments, depending on, say, what stage of the test cycle you're at. So what we're going to do here is create the portal. And so the portal is a web interface that Gloo Portal is going to generate for you that outside developers can use to kind of interact with your APIs. They can browse them, they can generate API keys, they can execute them in the sandbox here, and that sort of thing. So let's define a custom resource that's called the portal that will do this for us. And before that, what are we going to do here? We're going to create a secret that has the client ID and client secret in it for Keycloak. Okay, so this is what we're doing here is we're getting ready. So we have multiple authentication mechanisms you can use via portal. So you can have managed users that run strictly inside the portal and nowhere else if you want to do it that way. What we anticipate the vast majority of our clients are going to use is the interface we've built that uses the OIDC spec and allows you to delegate off to various popular identity management platforms, including Keycloak, Auth0, etc. Okay, so what we're going to do to get that ball rolling is we're going to create a secret that has these kind of OIDC elements in them. And so now that secret should be out there. And you can see right here, Pet Store Portal OID secret is exactly what we call this guy. And so that's been created. And that's good news. So now the portal itself, all right, so let's take a look at what we're going to create here. Again, there is a UI that you can use, a web, an administrator's interface that you can use to build this. We'll take a look at it a little bit later. But, and so it's a very different experience, but this is where we anticipate most of you will be going with your, with your real live deployments, is you'll be specifying something like this. And so we're gonna show you this interface. And so here's the portal component. As we've said before, you can specify a whole bunch of different logos, branding, and so forth to personalize the or to customize the portal for your organization, even down to the level of custom CSS, which we'll take a look at in a later lab. You can specify documentation pages, actually both static and dynamic ones, as well as here you can see the OIDC configuration that we're going to use to connect with Keycloak. Okay, as well as for this portal, last but not least, actually what environments we're going to publish via this portal. So in this case, we're going to publish out the dev environment. So let's grab this. And we will run that. And then we can take a look right here. You can see our portal is created and it's going to have all these goodies in it. You can see that the portal was successfully created. All right. We're also going to, so we have a user that's stored out there in Keycloak. We're also going to build a group, and we're going to install we're create a group called users that we're going to create as part of this environment and associate it with this portal as well. So let's create the group here. Oh, that went too far. And so you can see here's the YAML for the group that we created. And you can see that was successfully applied. All right. So not too much difficult going on there. That's lab 4. Let's move on to lab 5, and we will explore the administrative interface. So again, there are 2 primary user interfaces that Portal provides. One is an administrative interface, which is, not surprisingly used by administrators. And then there's also the Portal interface itself that's generated from the Portal specification dynamically and is used by the developers who are going to consume these services. So we're just going to do a port forward of our administrative interface out. So that's not what we wanted to do. Let's create a new tab here, and we will create the port forward. And I'm going to take you over here to my larger screen real estate browser. And so let's explore localhost 8000. And you can see actually browse through the artifacts that we have created so far in this exercise. So there are the APIs themselves. So you can see here is our API. Here are our API docs. You might recall we imported 2, a V1 and a V2. You can go look at the details of each of those. We compose those 2 API docs into an API product. And you can see again V1, V2. You can see the individual operations that are published in each of those products. And again, you could actually edit those here in this interface. You could edit that if you wanted to. We're not choosing to do that here. There's the portal itself. So you might recognize some of these settings that we just created in terms of colors and so forth. You might recognize the image of the dog there. We can also talk about later. We'll come back and talk about documentation artifacts that you can add, that you can publish via the portal. You can see the products that are published via this portal. You can see access, the access control. We don't have anything set up in the basic auth world, but under OIDC, you can see we're publishing this portal to the users in this group right here. Okay, so what else is here? Yeah, there's some more of the access control interfaces that you can use. We don't have any API keys published yet, although we will do that shortly. And then you can also dig deeper down into the Gloo config that was generated for us. So you can see we have 2 separate Gloo virtual services here. There's one that's called dev. It has 40 routes associated with it. So this is the one that's the actual user endpoint that we're pushing out there. And then there's the portal, the pet store portal virtual service, which is actually the virtual service that controls the portal itself. All right. If there are no questions, we will move right along to portal 6. Sorry, to lab 6. So now what we have done at the point we created the portal object and that was accepted. Now this portal interface is dynamically generated for us. So we can go and take a look at portal.petstore.com, and you can see there's all of our branding that we specified. We can log in here, so we're going to log in with OpenID Connect, and I believe, let's see, I forget this stuff. It's what is it? User one and password are the credentials. And so so you can see now we've been we've been accepted, been authenticated into the portal. We can go take a look at the APIs, and you can see all of the things that you saw before. This is actually the development sandbox here, and so you can see all of the endpoints, the operations being published here through this sandbox. All right. In fact, let's go. Oh, yep. Let's go back here and let's try out the inventory button or the inventory call. So we've already seen that. We've run that through curl already. Let's see if we can run it through our dev sandbox. So here in V1, we'll come to the store inventory. You'll notice there is an option for authenticating here. We don't really need to do that yet because we haven't secured these endpoints. We've secured the portal itself, but we haven't actually secured the runtime endpoints. So let's just let's try this out. And we'll execute. You see the curl command that's generated, and presto, we get back a 200, and the response body is exactly what we expect. All right, so that's all good news. Yep, we can also take a look at the differences between V1 and V2 because we published both of these versions to the portal. So if we take a look, for example, at let's go back up, the post V1 pet. So V1 does not have support for photos of the pets. And so you can see there's no photo URL element here in the post body that it's recommending. But if we go and we switch from V1 to V2, okay, here's the V2 version of that same service, and what you'll notice is within the request body, you'll see that there is here a photo URLs attribute because that's what we specified in the Swagger document that we used to build this particular version of the API product. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. So we have these two endpoints out there. We can log into the portal. We can see all the endpoints. We can execute them. They're wide open. The endpoints are, so we can use the sandbox and execute them without any kind of authentication beyond the portal itself. What we want to do now is we actually want to secure the core API for the pet store. And so to do that, you might remember we created this environment before. This is the representation of our dev environment. But now what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a usage plan associated with that. And you can see that right here. And so in this usage plan, we're going to give it a name, and that'll show up in the administrative interface. And we're going to apply for this. We're going to simply apply a rate limit to it. So we're going to say, hey, for this endpoint in this environment, we don't want to allow more than 5 requests per minute. Okay. And so that's what we're going to specify. That's what we're going to add to this environment. So let's paste that. And that was configured, looks like successfully. And then, so now that we have specified this plan in the environment, now we need to modify the group and allow them to use this plan. So you might remember that we called the name of this plan is basic. You can see that right here. And so we're going to modify the group specification to say, hey, in the dev environment, you should use the basic usage plan. And so as the administrator, we're going to do that. All right. And now if we go back to the portal and we try to run that same operation that worked fine before, actually, I think we were in V1. It shouldn't matter V1 versus V2, but just to show you, there's nothing up my sleeve here. Let's switch over. Let's switch over to V1, and we'll go down to the store interface here. And if we just try this out without authenticating, what you're going to see here is we get a 403 forbidden error, which is exactly what we would expect since we applied a usage plan on this particular endpoint or on this particular service. Okay, so that's working as we expect. All right, so we've shown how that we're blocked from accessing this, in a way that we don't want. Let's take a look at what happens when we actually authenticate properly. Okay, so let's go back here, and we will provision an API key for our developer. Okay, so let's go back to the portal interface. Go to our user here. You can see there's an interface that allows me as the developer. Remember, this is the developer interface, so I can go in here and you can see I have a plan associated with my with this product for me, but I don't have any API keys. And now that I've secured the interface, I need an API key. So let me add one of these guys. We will generate the key. And let's refresh. Yep. And when we refresh, here's the key. So we can copy that. And I think what the lab wants us to do here. Yep. So this time, just to show you that it works, whether you're in the developer sandbox or at command line, we're actually going to go do this via curl. And so we're going to use this. We're going to look inside the environment object, and we're going to extract the API key from this element, and we're going to store that into a variable called key. And so you can see there's the API key that was generated, and that matches what we got from the portal. And so then we're going to run this command, which basically just applies the API key as a header and then calls that same endpoint. So this time, rather than getting a 403, because we have a properly provisioned key, you can see we get back a 200 OK, and here's our inventory. Okay. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now, you might recall when we established this usage plan, one of the things we did is we applied a rate limit to it. And the rate limit was we want to limit this to 5 requests per minute. So if we go in here and we hammer this interface 5 times, the first 5 times we'll get back 200s. And assuming we haven't crossed a minute boundary, the 6th time we get back a 429 too many requests. Error, and we also get back a response header that says that this has been rate limited by Envoy. Okay, and so that is exactly what we would expect to happen given the way we set up our policy. Okay. Now, if you want to take a look at, if you remember before, we took a look at the virtual service that the portal produced for us, and so we have some additions that have been applied here. Specifically, you can see here's the rate limit config that was added to our virtual service. Remember, the virtual service is the routing component that Gloo Edge looks for, and we also have an XDOF stanza here that has the configuration reference that points to our environment here. Okay, so that's all Good stuff. Now, at this point, there are 2 labs left. Let's do a time check here. I've got 2:36. We're doing okay on time. So let me go ahead and push through. Actually, let me give you a minute. I want to make sure we're to the best extent we can. We want to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind. So if there's anyone who needs any support, please let us know. I'll just give you a little 30-second break here. All right, so labs 8 and 9, we're going to focus more on some of the details of the branding that we can do and how you can extend the portal in some interesting ways if you care about controlling the details of the branding. And so with lab 8, you've already seen up to this point how we've actually already exercised a fair amount of control over what we're presenting to our external users. So we've provided images, we've specified colors and that sort of thing. But you can get down to an even finer grain of detail, and so we'll show you some of these elements for how you can do that. So to start off with, let's take a look at the portal interface and go to the home of the portal interface, and let's bring up the Chrome developer tools. And let's take a look at this element right here. Okay, so this is the homepage portal title. We obviously specified the text that went in here, but you can see that here's the actual CSS that drives how this looks. Okay, and so if we want to, we can get down to the level of controlling, even at the CSS level, the details of how the portal displays things. Okay, so to show you how we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to change. You may have noticed this text is white right here for Pet Store Portal, and so we're going to change that, and we're going to make it gold, and we're going to do that via CSS. Okay, so here's the CSS block we're going to apply. This is the only change we're making to the default, and so let's copy that, and we will we'll go back to the not to the developer portal side, but to the administrative side, because we're obviously acting as an administrator now and just changing what the external users are going to see. And so if we drop down into this portal, you'll notice, so you can see there, there are the standard things that we've played around with a bit via the API, and we could do this via the API as well. But just to give you a little bit of a flavor of the administrative interface, let's go into this advanced portal customization, and you can see we have the flexibility. We can just paste in whatever we want here in terms of CSS. So everything is the same as the default except for this last line, which specifies that this particular element, the portal title, is going to be gold now. So we save that. And you can go here and you can see, yep, lo and behold, this has changed colors from white to gold. So pretty fine grain level of control that we give you to control this interface. Okay. And you can also see, if you take a look at the portal itself, the portal abstraction, you can see here there is a custom styling stanza here, and that custom styling stanza references a config map, and that config map contains the custom style sheet. Okay, so let's go. In fact, let's go take a look at the config map. And yep, here's the element, and you can see the custom style sheet is right here. And you might think, that looks nothing like a custom style sheet, and you'd be right from the standpoint of it's base 64 encoded, and so we need to decode that before we can actually look at what we have. And I probably made a mistake here by, let's see. Yeah, that wasn't a good choice. Let's do this. Echo. We'll get there. All right, let's copy that. Echo. All right. And let's get the second half of it here. And we'll take that string and we'll pipe that into the base 64 decoder utility. And lo and behold, so there in our config map, you can see here is the custom CSS that we specified with the gold color on it. Okay. So yeah, just to prove to you, there's nothing up our sleeve here. Everything is being stored in Kubernetes custom resources just as advertised. Okay. And then just for fun, if you want to say, well, okay, that was just a single stanza. Can we do something more sophisticated than that? Well, here's a much more complex snippet of CSS to apply. And just to show you one thing, when we apply this, one thing you can expect is the main container header. Currently, it's white right here. You'll notice this is white. And we're going to change that to be black. So you'll notice that header changes once we apply this. So we'll copy this to the clipboard. We will go to the administrative interface. Again, we'll do advanced portal customization. We'll replace this with this, and just for fun, let's make this. We'll make the color green as well. And so when we save it, what you'll see on the portal now, so you see the green text, and you see the black header bar here. All right, so again, pretty fine-grained control that we can exercise. So give you a minute here if you're following along. That takes us through the end of lab 8. There's one more lab to go, and that is lab 9 for extending the portal with documentation content. Some of you, if you have to leave early, I do want to put in a plug for the survey. We'll also show you this at the end as well. We still have about 45 minutes in our scheduled time, so I think we'll be able to get through everything. But just in case you have to go early, we do, as I said, this is the first time we've run this workshop. It's also a fairly new product in the Gloo universe, and so we would invite you to participate in this survey. No salesman will call if you participate, or unless you want them to. And so let me paste this into the chat. And so there's the survey link. And so we invite you to take part in that in case you have to leave early. But of course, we would like you to stay all the way through to the end. So let us go back to our lab here. Purpose of this lab is to show you how you can provide your own documentation content to go along with your API that you're publishing. Maybe billing information, maybe usage information, all kinds of things you can imagine that you might want to publish. So what most people, I think, want to do, at least to get started, is to just publish simple static pages. And so the good news is simple static pages are simple to publish. So let's go back here to our admin interface. And let's see, here's the portal. Where is the, oh, pages, there we go. I'm going blind apparently. And so you can see we don't have any pages created by default. So we will add one. And let's make this a static page. We will call it FAQ. We'll give it a URL like so. And let's just call this FAQ as well, and we will display this on our home page. Okay, so let's create this page. Something is, oh, I see. I didn't read my own error message here. It must consist of lowercase alphanumeric. Haha, I don't follow directions very well. All right, hey. So that worked as expected here. And of course, we didn't provide any content for the page, so we might want to do that. So you can see you can enter your page in markdown format here. So let's just let's do a frequently asked question. At least, you know, if you have a 4-year-old maybe at home. And let's just go with that. So let's publish those changes out there. And we will go back to our portal. And you can see here's our FAQ. Maybe we want to read some more, and there we go. So it's very easy to create simple static documentation using the portal. Okay, let's see if there's anything else we want to explore here with static pages. All right, I think we pretty much got that. You can also you can take a look if you go and look at the YAML for the modified portal. Very, very similar to what we did before. You can see or what we did before there's a config map here under static pages content. There's a config map that has a pointer off to this config map that was generated for us. And we could go through and like we did before, we could extract that, or we could decode it, and it's basically just going to show you the markdown content that we put into our FAQ. But I don't think at this point that's really going to add all that much value. So unless someone just screams to see the base 64 encoded version of this, I think we will just skip over that. But here you can see the process. There's the config map. Here's the FAQ. And if you if you decode that, you'll actually get the content. All right. So that was a static page. Now we're on to this is the final element of the lab here. So we're going to embed our own custom page in the portal. And what I say by custom page is it actually can incorporate dynamic content. And so you can see, here's the example we're going to use. We have this, no, it's not here. We have here this dynamic.html content, which is basically the same thing. So you can see there's some JavaScript in here with some text that's getting pushed out, and so you can see it has things like what's the who is the current user. So this would be the current user that's logged into the portal. as well as here is the API product that's out there, along with the versions that are published via that portal as well. So it's something you could potentially use as you become a more sophisticated user of Gloo portal technology. So let's see, let's take a look at what we need to do to set this up. So again, we're going to go back to the administrative page, and we're going to add a page. Only this time it's going to be a dynamic page, and we're going to specify this HTML file here. Okay, so let's go do that. We'll add the page. Let's call it dynamic. Okay, so we'll create that, and you can see here is here is our dynamic page, and we'll take a look at that. Let's go back here. Did I forget to do something there? I think there was user error involved there. Let's add a dynamic page. Ah, okay, I see what I did. I didn't actually upload the dynamic page. So let's bounce down in here. This is the Gloo portal workshop, and so this is the file you want right here, dynamic.html, and that's what's uploaded successfully. Now we'll specify these other bits. And we will create the page. What did I do this time? Page. Well, not going. Computing gods are not smiling on us here. So, at any rate, I think, trust me, it works. It worked for me this morning. This is one of the brand new elements of the product here, so there may still be some UI issues with that. But
sorry, which part are you trying to do?
The dynamic page creation bits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not exactly core portal operation, so I'm not going to sweat that too much.
Yeah.
But that's basically that's it. And so what I'd like to do now, Chris, you chimed in at the perfect time. What I'd like to do is turn it back over to you. We have a couple of additional slides that is going to talk a little bit about product direction and some other things. And so let me turn that over to you, and you can take it away.
Yeah, sure. Oh, you're going to share. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
I turn it over to you.
No. This is fine. It's only 2 slides. Yeah. So I just wanted to go through some of the benefits of Gloo portal. You know, I'm not the salesperson. I'm coming from the product direction. So this is my honest accounting of what, you know, why I came to Solo and why I think the Gloo portal is, you know, something that our customers are starting to adopt heavily. One is that if you go look in the industry, there's not that many developer portals for Istio. So Gloo portal, I think, is unique, as far as I know, in the industry for having a developer portal for Istio in particular. But then also, if you're using Gloo Edge or you have an interest in Envoy, I think it's the, one of the best portals out there. I don't even know if there's another portal for Envoy per se. Yeah, the ability to dynamically create routes. I believe we saw that in the workshop as well. That is something that came directly from customer request. High level customization, I think we missed some of this part, but the idea here is that you want a branded page. You want to, have whatever you have, your logo, and as your logo changes, you want to be able to change it on this page, and you want to be able to set up separate pages however you want. And some users have done some fancy things with this. And so I think that is a huge benefit. Instead of just creating this from scratch, this will save you a lot of time, money, and as you roll this out to not just internal users, but external users, I think this is the way to go. And then it's Kubernetes native. As you saw, everything is just basically a CRD. We're not doing anything fancy in that regard. So everything's a CRD. Everything is using the base primitives of Kubernetes. And because of that, because we are using CRDs, it is very GitOps and CLI friendly. I think a lot of the, or at least some of the workshop was done in the actual UI, but note that you could set this all up with your GitOps workflow. Next page. Yeah, and so we recently had a release of Gloo portal in January. Our releases are every quarter for main versions. It aligns with Gloo. It also aligns with Istio and Envoy, who have releases every quarter. The new features that we saw today are the API versioning. So you could have version 1 and version 2 of the APIs. I think that was a very important feature that our customers asked for. API search was another one that's pretty self-descriptive. Multiple APIs on the same domain, so that you could group them together. Environmental specific usage plans, as well as the HTTPS portal itself, so it's secure. What do we have in the hopper? And a lot of this stuff is already done and will be GA in March. So public APIs, this came from a user request. And this is just, I think, a common thing when you go use, say, like, the Twitter API page or Spotify. You're able to search in the catalog of APIs without signing in. You could go and look them up. You could see what the definitions are. And then to actually use the APIs, you have to request credentials. Like, it just has some automatic workflow where, I press a button and I use my Spotify account to use the APIs. So same thing here. We'll have the public APIs, the catalog that you could go and search through, or your customers can search through. But then, to actually use the APIs, you actually have to sign in. That's so that you can put those usage plans, those rate limits and whatnot on them. The other big ones that you'll see on here is the OAuth 2.0 support. So we have OAuth support to get into the portal, but this is OAuth support for the APIs themselves. So I believe during the workshop, you saw Jim use some API keys, but this is actually so that you could hook it up to your, and that's very common. API keys are extremely common use case within the enterprise. But we've had a lot of user requests that they want to hook this up to their IDP for the APIs themselves. And so that is forthcoming. HTTPS for the APIs, that's another common use case. So right now, it's just HTTP for the APIs themselves, but we will be supporting HTTPS very shortly. gRPC, this was another big customer request. We have support for Swagger and the Open API spec. And a lot of users have more than just REST APIs though. So they want support for gRPC and GraphSQL and all these newer tools. And so we are working on gRPC support right now for the portal, and that will be there again in March. And then dashboard for performance metrics in the portal. I think that won't make it into the GA in March. That will be a little bit of a late follower sometime in early next quarter. But that's being worked on currently for a bunch of other products like Gloo Mesh. And based on that work, we'll be able to put that into the portal. And so what are the Q2 initiatives? You saw what's there today, what's coming tomorrow, what's the 90-day plan or 60-day plan? We move faster. That is the billing. That requires metrics. GraphQL, I mentioned a little bit about it. Would be nice to,
I'm looking forward to that one. GraphQL is be awesome as part of portal.
Yeah, it's. I think that'll be a good solution, and that will give us a holy trinity of modern APIs with OpenAPI, gRPC,
Yep.
GraphQL. So that will be in there. And then multi-cluster support. So right now, the portal is really for single Kubernetes cluster. But we have products like Gloo Mesh, which are really foundationally a multi-cluster product. You can use it with a single cluster, and it manages Istio and your service mesh. It's great. But the value of that product increases as you have more clusters and more Istios and whatnot. And so we want to be able to make the portal understand that workflow, that multi-cluster workflow as well. And so that's going to be a big initiative for Q2. And so again, that's what we delivered yesterday. That's what we're delivering tomorrow. And that's what we're delivering next quarter. And a lot of this, if you saw the link, some of this will be showcased, the stuff in this quarter, the Q1 stuff will be showcased at SoloCon, which is our first user conference. That is starting March 23rd, if I remember correctly. And I hope it's free. I hope you all sign up. And we're also accepting speaker requests. So if you're a Gloo Edge user and you have some interesting use case, please give us a CFP. But there should be many users that come and talk about it. Also, we have a lot of sessions at IstioCon 6 next week, including T-Mobile is speaking. We have a workshop. I believe it's on Gloo Mesh, but Jim can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, Istio and Gloo Mesh. And then we also have, what am I thinking? We have, 5 other sessions in addition to that. And, everything Istio. So with that, I think we'll open it up to questions, Q&A.
One thing I'll throw in while we're waiting for questions, we really do solicit your feedback. I put the link to the survey back in the chat again. So yeah, if you can take a couple of minutes and fill that out for us, we'd really appreciate it. In terms of other things you can do next, we have a Slack channel in case you don't know about that. So you can go join, it's free, public Slack channel if you have questions about what you've seen today or other solo products.
Yeah, and we're very interactive on Slack.
Yeah.
I'm in there, Jim is in there. We're answering questions from users. So, and there is a channel for the portal as well.
Yep.
It's almost like a free support tier. Okay, any other questions? All right.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll give you back 25 minutes of your afternoon. Hope you all have a good day.
Thank you very much.